This episode is proudly supported by Powerhouse Parramatta.
Powerhouse Parramatta will open in 2025. The new museum will be the largest in New South Wales and is determined to offer the very best in hospitality. Perhaps your business can be part of defining a food and beverage offering which is expected to cater to 2 million visitors a year. This incredible opportunity for operators includes retail food and beverage, in-house residential catering, events and other hospitality ventures, encapsulating the diversity of cuisines and cultures that make Western Sydney so exciting. Interested to learn more? Powerhouse invites food and beverage operators to a briefing on Tuesday, 8th of August. For more information and to register for this exclusive briefing, go to powerhouse.com.au.
Everybody has their own part to play in this business, and everyone's ideas and everyone's experiments are greatly appreciated, and we can't wait for their ideas to come to fruition as well, and train them, and hopefully they'll be budding venue owners 10 years down the track.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Thanks to a swathe of migration, Indian and food from the subcontinent is making a huge impact in Australia. Indian in particular, with the differing cuisines of its many regions, is blossoming at all levels. But what does Indian look like in a modern pub? Nick Woolard is the chef and owner of Jagga Daku, soon to be opened in Perth, Western Australia. Nick, how are you?
I'm really good, Huck. How are you?
Good. It's great to get you on the show. You're doing something a bit different over there in WA.
Yeah, absolutely. Something, a little bit different, a whole new concept that, we've seen there's not a lot of it going on in Australia, and there's a little bit going on worldwide, but especially in America and in the UK. But yeah, Australia hasn't really seen this, modern iteration of Indian dining as such.
Well, tell us a little bit about Jagga Daku.
So Jagga Daku, we're a modern Indian gastropub, seating about 200 people, right in the heart of Leederville, which is a really vibrant, bustling suburb, probably about 3 kilometres out of the CBD. Modern, really vibrant, bustling suburb here of Leederville. Super excited to show the suburb, show Perth, and show Australia what we can do as a modern interpretation of such a traditional food cuisine.
How do you go about that with a gastropub environment and doing Indian cuisine? Tell us about how it's different to what we might know.
So obviously, for me, growing up as a teenager in the UK, Indian food was always such an extremely social thing. You'd go out, we'd have beers and share a whole heap of food amongst groups of friends or friends and family. So it's really about offering small and large plate dining that really gets people talking, and that super social aspect that what you get in a pub, but showing that Indian food can be brought into the modern era.
Does that affect the sort of beverage offering that you have in a pub environment, that sort of cuisine?
Not really, in such that, obviously Indian food links really well to obviously beers, also heading into the spirits where you've got those botanicals of gin. Whiskey is obviously a very predominant spirit in Indian culture. So the beverage program that we're offering, there's between 120 to 150 rotating wines, and then an ever rotating beer and spirit list as well. So not really as such. If anything, it gives us chance to play around with some really different wine pairings, obviously with the style of food that we have.
Taking on a project like this is pretty huge, a gastropub, and something a bit different as well. How did it all start, and how did you land on the site?
So I was up in Karratha in the northwest of Western Australia for 6.5 years before, working for a large restaurant group up there. The two directors of Jagga Daku, as they own a small traditional Indian restaurant up in Karratha. So I obviously got to know and I got to meet those guys, and we spent a lot of time together. And I took some time out and I left the restaurant group that I was working for. I wanted to spend some time, a bit more time with family. wasn't planning on working nights much more. Well, that's obviously changed a lot now. And I was approached, and they told me their dream and what they wanted to do in Perth, and they had this beautiful, well, what we anticipated would end up a beautiful site. It was absolutely horrible when we opened the doors to it, but yeah, the site was absolutely, it's huge, and they said, would you like to be a part of it? They knew what my food style was and how I cooked and how I created, and they were extremely keen to get me on board. And it was a pretty easy decision when I went home and spoke to my partner and the kids, and they were like, okay, sweet, we're ready to move to Perth.
Well, you mentioned that the site was quite horrible when you moved in. Give us an idea of what you were dealing with and how you've transformed it.
Absolutely. So the site originally was a very well-known cafe in Perth culture. It was called Greens & Co. There was a lot of graffiti used to happen on the front facade of the building, and they used to change it from Greens & Co. to Greens & Cock. So yeah, it's very, very well known in Perth folklore. And over COVID, the venue shut down, leaving behind an absolute trail of mess and God knows what else in the venue. So yeah, opening the doors we wanted to relocate the kitchen from where it currently was. So it was digging up big slabs, completely. The ceiling and roofing had to be ripped off, brand new ceilings, brand new roof, whole new air conditioning systems, new gas lines, new gas supply, everything. It was almost like we were starting from a blank canvas.
Well, I want to explore sort of what that process has been like, and also what you'll be doing there at Jagga Daku. But take us back to when you were young. Where did you grow up, and what sort of role did food play?
Yeah, Huck, so I was born in the UK, in a little town just outside of about 45 minutes outside of London, was where I grew up. And food played a huge role. My father, he spent a lot of time working away through his businesses that he had at the time, and it was always when he was back home, food was always, it was the important part about bringing us together as a family. He's an incredible cook, incredible home cook. Everything when we were children growing up there was nothing bought in, there was no processed food. It was always, everything was handmade. I always remember him, making beautiful pasta sauces, and yeah, dinner was always an occasion. Even if it was midweek, the table had to be laid, the table had to be set. So it was never sitting in front of the TV, with a TV dinner on the plate on the couch. It was always sit at the table. Parents would always, there'd be a really nice bottle of wine always, and then heading obviously towards into the weekend being English. A beautiful roast dinner, and whether it be a whole rib of beef or a lovely joint of pork, but yeah, everything, all the trimmings. He was always big on that. Normally after a quick walk across the road to the pub for a pint of Guinness was always his Sunday tradition, and so that's really where my love of food came from him, and about bringing people together as a family, because he worked away quite a lot.
You mentioned the roast, but is there any sort of dishes that you remember of your dad's that you look back fondly on?
The Sunday roast is obviously the big thing. The beautiful duck fat potatoes he used to make. All the gravies everything was made fresh. With all the pan drippings. He made an amazing lasagna. It was always a good little midweek meal for us. And we used to eat out a lot whenever he was home, and the opportunity to go to beautiful restaurants was, it was always there. Birthdays was always, we were allowed to decide and choose if we wanted to go somewhere. So it was normally a trip into London. I remember going back in the, late 90s, early 2000s to some, a beautiful Michelin star restaurant, or, being able to decide and being able to see this life that, chefs in the hospitality industry had at the time.
When did you first sort of get an inkling that, chefing might be for you, and what was your sort of first foray in the industry?
My first step into the industry was, as most people that are chefs and operators nowadays, was washing dishes. Had a little part-time job on a weekend working at a local pub. Used to go in the morning and used to do their bit of breakfast prep for them and wash their dishes, and a lovely old hotel, which funnily enough they they have the Guinness World Record for the world's oldest bartender there. And she worked, Dolly her name was, and she worked until she was the lovely age of 101 behind the bar. And yeah, she was amazing. And I used to remember her coming in and bringing me a cup of tea while I was washing the dishes. And yeah, just being able to step through and be able, and the chefs, bit of veg prep, or you can help me fry the eggs today. And, everyone watching them all work together was amazing. And it really did open your eyes a little bit to it.
In the early years, what were the sort of venues and people that you worked with that helped you sort of get your feet as a chef?
Yeah, that was definitely probably after moving to Australia. So 2006, the first big mentor I had went by the name of Josh Powell. He had a large cafe in Melbourne called Hobber. And on the weekends, we'd have 6 or 7 A4 pages of waiting lists of names and phone numbers for people. And it was absolutely non-stop. And Josh is ex-Fat Duck and ex-Feu de Monde. And he was able to really, really drive that super technique-driven food, but in an extremely casual environment.
Before we sort of go down the road of your experiences in Australia, what made you move out here? What lured you down here?
So my father's got his brothers and sisters moved out here back in the 60s. And there was always a dream of one day me being able to come out here and live. And I spent a bit of time here as a teenager on family holidays, and I always loved it. And the opportunity came up, and I was like, right, as soon as I hit 18, I'm going to get a working holiday visa and see what this Australian lifestyle is all about. And came here, moved and travelled around the country, worked for a little bit of some small dingy dives in Melbourne, up through Sydney, and up into Byron Bay. Worked my way all the way up the coast to Townsville, Cairns. And about 6 months into the trip, I got a phone call from my father, and he said that there was a job opportunity for him to move out here. And he said, would you like to maybe look at the opportunity of you staying as well? And you didn't have to ask me twice, really. The sun, the sand, and the beers and the smiles and everything, it really made it an extremely easy decision. So my father and his partner moved out here, and as we say, the rest is history. I'm a naturalized Australian now.
That trip that you sort of briefly mentioned around Australia, not a lot of people get the chance to do that. What did you take from that experience? Like how formative was that for you?
It was great being able to just see, even moving from town to town, state to state, city to city, the difference in, the food cultures everywhere you go, whether it be, in a high-end restaurant, or if it be, just a super casual beachside cafe, everyone did something differently, and it was all done in just an environment that seemed so relaxed and so almost chilled. Whereas, in the UK back in the late 90s, 2000s, late 2000s, everything was quite stiff. It's that relaxed Aussie lifestyle that I really saw and I really liked.
You mentioned that, you made that decision and to stay in Australia and build your life here. What's been the really sort of important venues and people for you as you build that career here? Yeah,
as I said, my first real large venue in Melbourne, Hobber, was, I'll always have the greatest of respect and love for Josh and what he did for that venue, and also what he offered me inside and outside of the kitchen. For me to be able to look at not just what goes on to put food onto a plate, but also from the business aspect of things in regards to, how much it costs to turn the lights on, how much it costs to pay the electricity bill every week. It's, I find that especially that's what people really need to know. Cooking, people see it as this beautiful, glamorous environment, and, stepping into business ownership and business partnership, people really need to know that it's not easy, and sometimes it's not fun. It's it's a numbers game that we're not all pirates anymore. It's a business at the end of the day. You mentioned that you spent about 6 years in Karratha, but how did you end up in Western Australia in the first place? I ended up in Karratha. Karratha was probably the furthest point away from Melbourne, and at the time I'd been through a bit of a rough patch in Melbourne. Working, I'd taken on some job roles that were probably a little bit over my head at my age, and fell into a pretty dark hole through some substance abuse issues, and a lot of drinking, and as a lot of chefs do, they do fall into that, and I fell into the hole pretty deeply. And Karratha was, as far away from Melbourne as I could possibly be, and I wanted to get away from there as quickly as possible. And I took, at the time, was just a 30-day temp job role up there. And as I got there, I met the owners of what is now known as the Stardek Group. The offer got put out for a full-time job, and it was pretty easy for me to get everything sent over as quickly as possible and start a new life in Western Australia.
Mental health and substance abuse and alcohol are pretty rife in the industry, and but you managed to see sort of the signs and pull yourself out of there. What was it that allowed you to sort of push through and move forward and away from that?
A nurturing work environment. Being up there, the two business owners, Bart Parsons and Lara Ducey. I've got absolutely nothing but love for them being able to find the good in me. I knew I was talented, and I knew how to cook, but it was being able to offer me opportunities in the senior management roles to actually develop as a human being as well.
Tell us a little bit about Karratha. It's such a world away from Melbourne. What was it about that place that you loved that became a real part of your life for 6 years?
So we had, they have 4 venues in town now. It's a little town or city of about 22,000 people. And we had their first venue is about, it's 11 years old now. It's called Blanche Bar. Sort of that, we'll call it a modern Australian restaurant, good food, good drinks, really good service, which was something that you never really saw in the town before. It was all high-vis thongs, palmies, and, pints of Swan Draft. And it was
sounds great.
Absolutely fantastic. And but it was that, Karratha was becoming a little bit more of a residential area as well, rather than just the fly-in, fly-out workers. And it was having that offering for families and also the women, the partners of the, people that work in the mines, being able to dress up and being able to come out for a fantastic dinner.
You mentioned you made that move out of Melbourne to change your life. How much did it change yourself and also your approach to cooking?
Oh, absolutely. I spent a lot of time when I was, I thought I was fantastic. I thought, sitting on a couple of bottles of wine or, into whatever substances were available, I thought that opened up my creative mind. Now I look back and I was just like, I have no idea what was actually going on at the time, which was, extremely sad. But now I can look, and it's just having that clarity.
Yeah.
And being able to sit and really think about something and ask myself the questions before just jumping in at the deep end and going, let's just do something because I think it works. Now it's putting something down and going, all right, let's work on this minute by minute, day by day. Can this be done?
Before we get to the project you're on now, tell us a little bit about your approach to cooking. Is there any sort of dish or ingredients that you use that sort of typifies your cooking?
I love cooking seafood. It's been a passion of mine for years, and obviously up in Karratha we had an absolute bounty of beautiful ocean fish, whether it be coral trout, crayfish, scampi. It was all very, very readily available. And through the little wine bar that I was working at there, we were ever changing menus weekly, doing monthly degustations, which we were the first people in the Northwest to start doing. And tell you, it's a hard slog in a small kitchen with you and maybe one other person trying to put out 600 plates of food for a service. But it was amazing to open up and be able to offer the city something completely different that they'd normally only get if they travelled to Perth or travelled to another major city.
WA is renowned for some extraordinary seafood. Is there any seafood that jumps out to you as sort of your favourite and a way that you like to cook it?
Just a beautiful pan-roasted piece of coral trout is probably my death row meal. Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. It doesn't need anything else. It doesn't need, most of the time doesn't need a sauce or anything. It's just, a beautiful, perfectly cooked piece of fish is, something to be amazed by. And I love the way that it's treated, and you treat it perfectly and it's going to taste absolutely beautiful. It's having the respect for something that we've pulled out of the ocean and treating it right.
You mentioned the connections that you made with the other owners of Jagga Daku up in Karratha, but tell us about your approach to Indian and your immersion into that world. What's it been like for you?
Look, it's been absolutely amazing. I've got my uncle married into a Fijian Indian family as well back in the early 2000s. So there's always been a little bit of Indian going to visit uncles. It's always a beautiful full table of curries and chutneys and biryani and everything like that. And obviously, again, coming from the UK, curry, is so predominant. It's, the most popular food in the UK at the moment. And, being able to go out with my father, my family, my friends, and, be able to sit there, it's always been something that I've always incredibly enjoyed. Some of the cultural, traditional techniques of cooking are, they're still very new to me. So that this has been an interesting learning curve, as we've been installing the kitchen, making sure we've put 2 large giant tandoor ovens that we've brought over, and being able to use these big clay ovens, not just in a traditional sense for cooking naan bread example, being able to see what we can do. So we're exploring techniques of, roasting whole chickens in the tandoor, cooking pieces of fish in there, to really see how we can utilize them in a completely different modern way.
Have you seen the cuisine in a different way after this sort of immersion?
Oh, absolutely. Everything is very, very traditional and deep rooted in not just a country's culture, but into a family's culture. Every family does something completely different. So we speak to, as we've been interviewing chefs, they have one way that they've always done things because that was the way their mother or their grandmother taught them. And it's now trying to go, well, this is what we're trying to do. And, absolutely bring in, tell us more about how your family cook and let's see what we can do.
Building and making and opening your own restaurant is a dream of many in the industry. But what's this process been like for you, building it from scratch? What's been the sort of real triumphs along the way?
Triumphs have been, being able to walk in the door every day, and we can see progression every day. 6 months ago we walked in and you couldn't even walk on the floor, but now we can walk in and there's dining tables, there's chairs in there at the moment. We can turn the canopy and we can turn all the stoves on, and it's absolutely amazing knowing that that's something that we've done. But there's been plenty of struggles at the time. I'll call it bureaucracy of many cities and local councils, and the red tape that we all have to jump through. And that's something I've never really seen and never experienced too much. But it's just getting all the sign-offs and all the approvals that are needed. I've never had to deal with that until now, and it's been a learning curve to say the least.
The last couple of years have been a learning curve for all of us as well, with COVID and the ramifications of that on everyone in the industry. What sort of impact has it had on you? Have you taken positives and a different approach to your craft since then?
Yeah, absolutely. We were incredibly lucky in Karratha when COVID happened. We were almost in this little pocket of nothingness, really. We were actually in the process of, one of the venues we had was an all day dining. We did breakfast, lunch, we did dinner, we had a little bottle shop in there as well, and we had always spoken about turning it into a little wine bar. And we sat there and we were in the middle of pulling tables and chairs outside to start repainting, and we got the message that, Mark McGowan had said that, that hospitality is, pretty much no more for, dining in. And we sat there and we were like, well, this is almost the perfect opportunity for us to do what we really wanted. And we spent, I think we were in lockdown for about 12 or 13 weeks. we spent the time completely renovating the venue into a beautiful wine bar. We bought all the 4 kitchens that we had together, and literally within probably, I'd say, 6 hours of being in lockdown, the operators had already takeaway menus were done. We were ready to go, and we sat there and we launched takeaways. And because we were stuck in a small little town, we thought, what else can we do? So we spoke to all of our suppliers and did what we could, and we started advertising, whether it be a meat pack or a seafood pack or fruit and vegetable packs. And we were lucky that we have got a tavern license with the ability to sell alcohol as well, takeaway. So we turned our restaurant into what can only be described as this magnificent, produce store, and we had cool room trailers delivered up to us, and I put the knives down for a while, and I jumped in the car and became a glorified Uber driver. And it was, look, I sit there and I absolutely loved it. There were so many of our regular customers that would come in every week, and I'd cook beautiful food for them. But it was lovely to be able to turn up at their front door with a beautiful box of fresh seafood from our suppliers in Perth and be able to drop that, so they were able to cook and they were able to have that experience at home.
Well, you're on the cusp of opening the restaurant or the gastropub. How are you feeling, and what are you looking forward to, when you swing the doors open?
Oh, how am I feeling right now? Still very nervous, but incredibly excited. I've got the full support of my friends, my family, my lovely partner and her children, and my children, and we're all extremely excited. The kids are over the moon to be able to, what they call, come into their own restaurant, and I'm really excited to be able to build on something and build on a future for those guys and us as a family, and be able to offer them, hopefully some lovely opportunities in life, hopefully.
Tell us a little bit about the food. Is there a couple of dishes that you could share with us that sort of exemplifies that Indian gastropub offering?
Yeah, so we're the food offering is split up into a few sections. So we'll be offering some extremely small bites when people walk through the door. Obviously, India has a traditional, what they call pani puri, which are a little wheat dumpling that are hollow in the middle and normally filled with a tamarind or aromatic water. Kind of really doing a bit of a play on that, where we'll be making our own whipped cod's roe, and we'll be piping the whipped cod's roe into the pani puri ball, and just topping that off with a little bit of scampi caviar from the northwest. Really nice little salty snack just to get you started. And again, working the whole chicken roasted in the tandoor, which is still an extreme work in progress, but I'm extremely excited about it. Roasting it completely whole, just retain as many of those juices as possible, and then a really nice pink peppercorn and duck fat sauce over the top of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. Well, you're doing a very exciting project over there, and had the most extraordinary sort of change in your life as well over there in WA. What do you love about what you do?
Oh, what do I love about doing what I do? It's definitely about bringing people together, cooking or providing an experience for people where, they walk out with a smile on their face. They put that first bite of food in there, and you can see their excitement that they're able to try something different. Again, being able to meet people from all over the world. We've got an extremely varying staffing group coming in at the moment, and everybody has their own part to play in this business, and everyone's ideas and everyone's experiments are greatly appreciated, and we can't wait for their ideas to come to fruition as well, and train them, and hopefully they'll be budding venue owners 10 years down the track.
Well, Nick, it's an absolute honour to catch up with you today, to hear just a part of your story. Good luck with the venue opening, and please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
No, thanks, Huck. I'm looking forward to it.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.